Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this Citizens Inquiry into Manitoba Hydro. The purpose of the inquiry is to see how in the world Manitoba has been able to take our crown jewel, one of our great economic engines and the promise for the future, and create a situation where the Crown Corporation is $25 billion in debt, has overbuilt its supply of generation. It is, its export markets have failed or are collapsing. The hydro rates are going through the roof. We have a situation where a new Crown Corporation is being carved out of Manitoba Hydro to be paid for by Manitoba Hydro and to reduce the demand for the product created by Manitoba Hydro, of which they have too much of in the first place. And it's green, and it used to be cheap. Manitoba was the center of hydro and long distance transmission coming out of the 60s. And through that, a world leader. Dozens of companies, thousands of Manitobans have been employed because of the expertise that Manitoba Hydro was able to provide the rest of the world. In the last 15 years, not only has the legacy been severely harmed, but the future of Manitoba is in jeopardy. We need to find out how this happened, who is responsible, hold them accountable, increase transparency, and evaluate where we are truthfully and figure out where to go from here. The forecasts of the past by hydro have been wrong. They have been completely wrong in some cases, and predictably wrong. The Public Utility Board has pointed this out, and others. So how can this happen in Manitoba? The purpose of this inquiry is to answer those questions and to provide experts in Manitoba and the people of Manitoba who are going to be affected the opportunity to express themselves, and together, myself and the distinguished people who I will introduce in a moment are going to conduct our own inquiry. We hope that this will encourage the provincial government to have an inquiry, as is the expectation of Manitobans, especially after the last election. The government has chosen not to. So it is up to us, the people of Manitoba, to do it ourselves. And we're going to do it well. We have an excellent group of panelists, and this is all being being done live, transmitted to on Facebook, which I appreciate. The people who are watching from across the world, I guess, there will be at least tens of thousands of people who have the opportunity to watch this. All you have to do is log into my Facebook page, Stephen Fletcher, and you will find it there. We are going to start the hearings this afternoon in the legislature at noon today, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I would like to allow the people on my left an opportunity to introduce themselves and allow them to make some remarks. So, Dennis?
Okay, my name is Dennis Woodford. I'm an electrical engineer. I've been in this province 47 years, worked 15 years with Manitoba Hydro, 15 years as Executive Director of the Manitoba High Voltage DC Research Centre, and now I'm President of an engineering consulting company where we work around the world. And it's because of the fact that I'm working in countries like the United States, European Union, Australia and other places that we see things vastly different than what's happening here. And it is distressing, and I would like to contribute as a citizen to try and find a way forward for us here in this province to move ahead and join the rest of the world. Thank you.
Phil?
Yes, my name is Philip Blaine. I'm, I guess, a returning native of Winnipeg. I've been away around the world for 45 years or so, and mainly in telecommunications and electronics in some senior management positions in UK and New Zealand. And when I got back to my roots here as a fifth generation Canadian, I was quite astounded to start learning, a learning process starting 3 or 4 years ago, to start learning about the fortunes, I guess one could say misfortunes, of Manitoba Hydro. I was quite stunned by what I was seeing in the various reports and accounts and so on. In fact, I guess I could say I was have been feeling like the little boy on the side of the road when the parade goes by and decide that maybe the king crown has got a few clothes on. That was the feeling I had. So as a citizen, I'm delighted today to be participating in this first step of an inquiry, kindly hosted by Stephen and chairs, and I look forward to doing my best to participate this afternoon. Thank you.
From the landowners. Esther?
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. My name is Esther Lenz. I'm a resident and a landowner from Brunkill, Manitoba. I've been there my entire life on my parents' family farm. I'm also a member of the MBLC, the Manitoba Bipole Landowners Committee, and I represent the interest of landowners who are impacted by the Bipole 3. Myself and others, and I just like to add this, were distressed by the Bipole and the way in the handling of hydro in the recent years, so much that our family has initiated the first steps to reduce our power and to eventually remove ourselves off the grid. That is how we see my little world, but as part of this citizens inquiry, as a citizen, I like to thank for this opportunity to work with this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, each of you. The panelists this afternoon will include Graham Lane, who is the former chair of the Public Utilities Board. We have a submission from Gardel Liberty, former Dean of Engineering, and we have other stakeholders that have presented at committee before, but I'm afraid to say that when, for example, at the Efficiency Manitoba Committee, the people who presented, including the union representatives, citizen representatives, were not heard or listened to, and the decisions went ahead without even reflecting on what they had to say. And that is exactly wrong, and we are going to try and allow an opportunity for those voices to be heard. This is the first of a series of meetings on the hydro inquiry. And at the end of the series of meetings, we will develop a report. And I will say that these are, unlike many politicians, these are people who are experts in the field of engineering, accounting, economics, market forecasting for power, people who were there in hydro, former hydro executives, former hydro engineers, journeymen. There's a lot of people who want to have their voice heard, and it's the intention of this inquiry to allow those people to have their voice. There will be an opportunity to provide comments live from anyone who is watching these presentations this afternoon and further on, which is another innovation. And we will also be allowing, obviously the public to attend, and for people to make submissions, become witnesses. There will be a paper trail, a website with everything that is said or handed in that will be made publicly available, and it will be easy to find. And finally, again, you can go to my webpage or my Facebook page, Stephen Fletcher, or there's a new Facebook page, Citizens Inquiry. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll answer, or the panel will answer your questions. Are there any questions?
Have you asked any current hydro executives or board members to come? And what was the response?
With we have not asked former or current board members. We do have former board members and members of the executive that are willing to participate. Which will be helpful in trying to understand how and what and why things happened. I will note that the current board members of Hydro didn't even attend any of the committee meetings on Efficiency Manitoba, even after it was asked that someone from Hydro be at the meetings. So, and that was a government committee meeting dealing with Manitoba Hydro. I hope current board members will participate, but based on the cost, I don't expect current board members will, as they haven't participated in anything publicly in the past.
What exactly do you hope to get out of this inquiry?
Answers?
Like, what are the key answers you need, maybe is another
Well,
way for me to ask it.
Well, why did we overbuild? We built a massive dam for $10 billion at a time when the export market is collapsing. And in the same breath, we're creating a new Crown Corporation to reduce the demand of that power that is already in abundance. So that in turn will increase the cost to all of the ratepayers. It's kind of water going down a drain. By pole 3. Seriously. There needs to be accountability for project. It cost 4 times as much, it's twice as long as it needed to be, and the routing was obviously along the east side of Lake Winnipeg. And yeah, at the time, the NDP said, oh, well, we want to preserve it for a UNESCO site, and a hydro line would somehow interfere with that. First of all, a hydro line would not interfere with it. And secondly, the NDP then announced a road up the east side of Lake Winnipeg. So the hypocrisy there is clear, but how did and why did Manitoba Hydro go along with a very poor public policy direction? And it may turn out that they had no choice.
Yep.
And then we need to expose that. It may be that they did have a choice, and we need to expose that.
Don't we already know a lot of that though? I mean, the government can order them to do things, they're arm's length, but they can say, this is what you're building, this is what you do. Don't we kind of know those answers?
Kinda, sort of. Do we? Well, let's get it down on paper.
What would we uncover if, and the NDP clearly said, we want this bipole line, we want it in this side of the province, this is why. It seems like the answers are out there in a lot of the questions that you're raising.
That's what you'd like to.
You're right in a sense, but the big question in my mind is, where do we go from here? We can find out and clarify the past a bit, but as far as I'm concerned, where do we go from here? What opportunities, what possibilities, how can we build up the resources that we've got? And that's what my ambition is, being on this panel.
Isn't
To
the
follow
view-
Joanne, the chair of Hydro has essentially said much of the premises you're outlaying, that political direction overbuilt the capacity of hydro for generation, that there was political motivation in the decision on Bipole 3, that it's left the company in extreme debt at a time of declining market capacity. Just to back up Joanne's question, haven't some of these fundamental questions been answered by the people that are running the company now?
No, the answer is no. We were there was a commitment to have an inquiry into Manitoba Hydro. Certainly, that was the expectation of many Manitobans. The issue around, it was knowing, well, we're building another line into Minnesota. We're signing contracts that may be detrimental to Manitoba. If we don't learn from the past and understand what happened, and nobody's held accountable, then we're just going to continue making the same mistakes in the future. We are spending billions upon billions, and there's another billions to go with finishing off the dam, and also the interconnection with the United States into a market that is now dead in part due to President Trump's changed agenda on climate change and energy. So when something that fundamental happens, do you continue spending when you don't have any money?
Yeah, but are you going to hear from anybody who made those decisions, or are you going to hear from people who've been criticizing those decisions for years now and continue to do so?
There's at least one voice former vice president of Manitoba Hydro, who will present, and there will be political people that will be approached from the fill-in era, where things seem to be going reasonably well. You know, the Conowapa contract was canceled, but that was because of Bob Ray in Ontario. It wasn't anything to do with Manitoba. And then follow through. But Bipole 3, from an engineering perspective, there was, I'd be interested if Hydro can pull out an engineer that actually said, yes, let's go down this way because it's cheaper, it's more efficient, it's more reliable. Like, because to my knowledge, there aren't any engineers who would say that. And
Yeah, but Sandy
what about
Riley
it?
has said that that was a mistake, it was politically motivated. I mean, who would you, and given that the NDP directed Hydro to do what it's doing, I mean,
Yeah,
are you,
the
do you
issues-
expect Hydro to pull
Well-
somebody out of the ranks and say, no, I disagree with Sandy Riley and?
well, again, these are questions, and so you're talking about intimidation within the organization, which is an issue of political or corporate culture. And if that exists, that needs to be addressed as well. Because if people who are providing truth to power are penalized or banished from doing so, that says something. And if this inquiry uncovers a culture of that nature, well, that is important going forward. I would also say that Bipole 3 is not a certainty in its use, because there may not be the demand out there. We need to understand that. There's also some, I think, Esther, at the end of the table, may you like to say something on this issue what we're hearing, Esther, is the Bipole 3 issue's done. You know, you move on. What do you have to say about that?
Yes, the Bipole 3 has gone through our property, the towers are placed, the line is up, but we were advised that this is a 100-year project, and now we have to work as a team. How do you work with the Bipole 3, and what about the maintenance and the upgrades, and reviewing the whole entire process about working together in a safe environment, and with a clear understanding of what is it going to be like. These are big poles. They are placed in the center of some people's property, like myself, and so there is now a 100-year partnership between landowners and working around Bipole 3. So it's 1 year is done, but there's many more to go, and we need to clarify some of the details about what this means to us.
And sorry, have you asked for those details? You just feel like they're not telling you how they're going to maintain the lines, they're not telling you, like, what details have they not really been providing so far?
I'm a landowner, or the land was expropriated, but what does this mean now? So am I entitled to go and safely work around this property? What if a piece of equipment knocks the line? What if the line or tower tumbles on my property? I don't know. How is Hydro going to approach the maintenance? Are they going to approach maintenance in the winter season, the spring, the fall? I mean, I don't know. It's all about the details, and how do you work as a partnership now, in my opinion.
And they haven't
But
really
they haven't
provided-
given you any of that
Yeah.
information? That would be shocking to me.
No, we have details and things at a higher level about, the intentions and the plans, but once again, I don't have an easement agreement with Manitoba Hydro at this time. I've been expropriated, so they took that piece of land, but I have to work around this land, and we have to know who's going to be the stewards of the land, who's going to maintain the weeds, how we're going to do this. We're in the process of trying to further those details about how to work as a partnership.
I think Philip would like to say something.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
But just to, before we leave that, they didn't give you any of that information? Like, when they take over land, isn't that then their responsibility to do those weeds like they do around other lines?
Yes, and there are differences of opinions and different landowners were impacted differently. I can give you an example. When they were putting the line up, the fields were swathed and being processed and harvested, right? But I have to go and ask, like, when are you coming through? Like, exactly, like the line's going over the number 3 highway, it's going over the tracks, it's going over my property. You know, people wanna get the crops off, they wanna get the line up. It had to be within that same week. Yes, of course I had to work with the Manitoba Hydro manager and work through those details. But that's a important and critical time for people that are working and harvesting the land. And yes, it's important for hydro, and there was no discussions about the timing of these things. It was just sort of like imposed and work it out and hope for the best.
I'd like to make a brief comment about the future for the ratepayers. The burden that is now facing every man, woman, and child in this province, by rough calculation, is approximately $20,000 per head in terms of ongoing debt in the future. And the burden of the ratepayers is actually way excessive too, because I think even in the recent PUB hearings, there was people presented the fact that the ratepayers shouldn't in Manitoba be shouldering the whole burden of the problems of revenue problems for hydro. And also the revenue problems for hydro are partly quite significantly due to this practice of levies, which the government is exacting upon them, from capital expenditure and also from guaranteeing debt and also from water rentals, so-called. Now, when the citizens of Manitoba are also faced with 2 credit rating downgrades in less than 2 years, and the first one very clearly stated it was because they didn't feel that hydro itself was a self-sustaining corporation in any way. They made that very clear. And the second time, when they downgraded again, they said, oh, well, actually, it's due to this long-term debt, which we can't see the burden of increasing debt to be lessened enough by cost-cutting here and cost-cutting there. So you may well ask, in the future, looking at the future only, should the government not step up to the plate more and actually reconsider the structuring of this debt, which is now being saddled for a horrendous amount on the poor consumers here, citizens of Manitoba? What could be done that's not that way? Well, actually, I've also found, and I think we could get evidence to this exactly, that the way it's being done here, shouldering that 100% of all this onto the ratepayers with massive, not just swinging rises, but in cost, but actually really damaging to a lot of people, especially the poor people, is that it doesn't take place, not take place anywhere else in Canada, and so it's very straightforward for someone to say, well, let's restructure that and let's put that in there. So the accountant, not an accountant, but you put that into the proper debt load for the future over many years for the government itself. Maybe the government has got a serious conflict of interest, maybe a huge conflict of interest, as they take more than $1 million a month. $1 million a day, I do apologize. They take more than $1 million a day, which Hydro has to fund from their revenues. And I think it's coming from the debt, obviously. That was in the first town hall I read, my being a student on the sidelines, the first town hall that Hydro held, they didn't ask for a bailout. That's what it was termed in the word spinning. But they asked for some help on levies. Can you please give us a bit of relief on levies? No. So there we go. Those are the sort of things that need to be examined further. And this first step, citizens' inquiry, which is only a first step, it's not pretending to be more than that, is hopefully going to set a stage and encourage the government to sort of take another look at this for the future.
Isn't the PUB, though spending more than $10 million, that'll get billed back to Hydro, to determine if it buys Hydro's own story on the kind of debt it faces and the costs it faces,
Well-
and whether it should be, the debt should be paid off in the next few years or spread out over decades.
Well, if you look at the PUB recommendations from the last, probably for the last 10 years ago, Hydro's estimates on load forecasting, on the market. Hydro has got it wrong every single time. Public Utility Board was closer to reality, but Hydro went out ahead with Hydro's plan anyway. And history has demonstrated in no uncertain terms that Hydro was wrong. They didn't listen to the Public Utilities Board, and they're not listening to the Public Utility Board now. And we see this with Efficiency Manitoba. They say that, oh, they were listening to the Public Utility Board on that. Well, no, actually, the Public Utilities Board said, build a kiosk or reduce demand through demand-side management. Do not do both. And that's exactly what the government now is doing. So we are continuing with this domino effect of bad decision after bad decision.
But isn't this I mean, you were part of the government that was elected 2 years ago, and they scrapped the entire Public Utilities Board and appointed completely new members and a new board of the utility, and directed the PUB to have a different mandate and more autonomy. I mean, are we not at PUB in a different world than we were when they were making the mistakes that you're suggesting happened in the past?
No,
Or
I'm
is
not.
it just this continuation of the same
Oh,
thing?
I'm not making any complaints about the PUB under the previous government. I'm just pointing out that Hydro didn't follow their recommendations. Then, it doesn't matter who is on the commission, Hydro just doesn't listen.
If you know all this, what is it you're trying to find out then?
I would like to have other people express their point of view, and if I'm, and drill down a little bit. Like what Philip said was essentially, the government benefits from Hydro having a huge debt, and Hydro benefits from borrowing, and the government has made bad decisions in the past, and it's making bad decisions now.
How long is your hearing going to take, given that you have federal aspirations and a nomination meeting may be called at sometime not that far down the line?
Well, one has, I don't understand your question.
Well, you're calling this, obviously you're doing this as an MLA. You have ambitions to go federal. How long is this hearing going to take?
Well, it'll take as long as it takes. Again, I don't.
Will you be around for the
Oh,
convention?
yeah, I'm around until the next federal election. This has been long planned. I've been involved in this file. You know, federally, you bring up federally, I was the minister responsible for the largest crown corporations in Canada. So I can bring some knowledge to the table, to this citizens' inquiry about how crown corporations should and should not work. Also, I have long championed, federally or provincially, that we need an east-west hydro grid. And if Ottawa is really serious about reducing CO2 emissions, they need to force, if necessary, Saskatchewan and even Alberta to accept green Manitoba power. There are billions of dollars in the Building Canada Fund for this very type of project, and I know it's there because Denny LaBelle, who was the transport minister, and I were charged with the Building Canada Fund, creating it, and our provinces have had another thing in common, that is great hydro potential. So yes, we put money in for transmission lines and interconnections. Nobody has done anything on that, provincially or federally. So in regard to your question, it's a provincial issue and a federal issue, and I'm doing good work on behalf of the people of Manitoba. That's all that matters.
I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here, because I have to say that in the question of who's responsible, I think it's been pretty clearly established that there was political interference at the utility for a number of years to direct them into massive projects. I think that question's been answered. It's certainly been answered repeatedly by the current chair of the company. And it's been said by the premier of the province over and over and over again. As to holding them accountable, some would say voters did. But your comments about secrecy at Hydro, in terms of what happened, may quite be valid, and I would accept that, and also your questions about your relationship to Hydro and their responsibilities as a landowner, and you're not knowing things. Well, that, to me, that's stunning. I just don't understand how somebody could not fully brief you and you would have a sheaf of documents in your hands as to the relationship you have there. But the question that has been asked nationally about other hydro projects that have gone woefully wrong is how? How do you get a company that builds dams professionally and has done several, gets to the 4th or 5th, and it's got a cost overrun of a factor of potentially 3 or 4 times? And I haven't heard anybody ask that question, and it's a legitimate question, and I guess I'm gonna phrase this as, are you going to ask that? How does Kiosk get north of 10 billion in a company that's been building dams since the 20s?
Yeah, I know, for 500 megawatts. You know what? I would say that is a great question. And ladies, let's find out.
Because I know that's what they're talking about in Newfoundland with
Oh,
Muskrat.
well, yeah,
That's not, their inquiry is not how we got into this mess, it's how did the project get out of control?
That's a whole nother topic, but yes,
Can I make a
yes, go ahead,
statement?
Dennis.
Newfoundland is a very good example. And there's one difference between Newfoundland and Manitoba Hydro. Newfoundland and Manitoba. And this came out in the PUB hearings with the intervention of the Consumers Association of Canada and Harvest. They had an expert, and he clarified the fact that Nalcor, which is the Crown Corporation in Newfoundland and Labrador, the risk of their project is not on the ratepayers. It's into the government. Because there's a line being built, undersea cable, down to Nova Scotia. And so some of the Muskrat Falls energy will be going exported down into Nova Scotia and then across the Main into the US. The risk and the huge, tremendous overruns on that project is shouldered by the provincial government. Every corporation, every utility in Canada, whether they're Crown corporations or investor-owned, or publicly owned, the risks of exporting electricity or importing electricity are shouldered by the shareholder, as in Newfoundland, as in Quebec, not the ratepayers. And the shareholder of Manitoba Hydro is the government of Manitoba. And so they should be holding the debt that's being accumulated, because Kiosk is stated by the PUB to be built for export. The line that's going down to Minnesota is built for export. Bipole 3 is built for export, but they said it was for reliability. All that cost should be on to the government, not as every other utility in North America does. And I think
The
that's-
bond rating agencies have signaled that they're on the cusp of that,
Yeah.
of doing just that.
Yeah,
So that potentially is gonna happen.
we hope so.
Stephen, excuse me, I have to go into something else. I didn't get the spellings of everybody's name, and I don't think we had a news release on it, and if they're professional credentials, could I just get that, please?
Okay. I'll start. Dennis Woodford, D-N-N-I-S. Woodford, W-O-O-D-F-O-R-D.
Philip with one L.